Our anime begins with the protagonist desperately running from a horned rabbit while shouting that it probably shouldn't be tasty, realizing that the only thing he can do is run and scream, as he has no idea where he is, and wondering what kind of creature is chasing him. As soon as he asks this question, a mysterious voice emerges stating that it will assess, and a status screen appears showing the rabbit's information, asking if he wants more details. However, at that moment, the rabbit jumps toward him, being cushioned by the protagonist's backpack, who then ends up falling on top of the animal and accidentally crushing it. Elsewhere, we see an elf being instructed to head east, as something precious will appear there. While the protagonist celebrates having survived but remains confused about where he is, he takes out his phone and notices that there is no signal, starting to question whether the voice he heard is real or just a hallucination. Until, hungry, he looks at the dead rabbit and wonders if it is edible, prompting the voice to appear again to show its statistics and confirm that the meat can be consumed, leading him to store the animal in his backpack for emergencies. Intrigued, he tries to understand the voice better, points to his backpack and asks what it is, receiving the assessment response again, which surprises him. Then, he looks up at the sky and asks the same question, but the voice says, "There is nothing to assess." However, when looking at the ground, the response drastically changes to Labyrinth Devourer, level 273, leaving him extremely worried. Repeating the process and always receiving nothing when looking at the sky and the same frightening answer when looking at the ground, he realizes there may be something dangerous hidden beneath his feet. Trying to comprehend his situation, he asks to evaluate himself, seeing the name Manabi Ribike correctly, but becoming confused upon seeing species human and class assessor, as he has always been just an ordinary student and there were never any classes in his world. Then he asks who the voice is, and it replies that it is a status support but cannot provide personal information. Analyzing his skills, he realizes that he possesses several and tries to use one of them. Dramatically screaming, the wise man's eyes activate, but nothing happens, leaving him embarrassed. Then he tries to activate the tutorial, but discovers it is already active. Not understanding its function, he decides to ask for the world map to locate himself. However, he is disappointed to see something that does not seem like a useful map, realizing that, while fleeing from the rabbit, he had been walking in circles, and that his sense of direction is terrible. Even so, he continues walking, straight while following the map, until after a while he finds a road, but as he approaches, he slips and falls. As he sits up, a voice announces that he has gained a new title, which, when he checks, is Castaway from Another World. However, at that moment, he hears a sound beside him and, looking over, sees a muscular dog, drooling and ready to attack. But before anything happens, a shot hits the creature in the head, bringing it down instantly. This makes the protagonist look around, and he sees an elf on a rock to whom he quickly thanks for saving him. She replies that it was no big deal, introducing herself as Emalia and asking his name, to which he responds that he is called Ribik and is completely impressed by the girl's ears. But Emalia soon asks if he came from the meadow and how he managed to escape from there. However, the protagonist continues practically hypnotized by her ears and asks if she is an elf, to which Emalia replies yes. Then he questions if this is some kind of cosplay, but she has never heard that word before, looking confused. Then she changes the subject and asks why he was at the Abyss Devourer, leaving the protagonist confused and making him ask what exactly that is, which shocks the elf that he entered such a dangerous place without even knowing what it was about. Meanwhile, in his mind, he wonders who she is, and the mysterious voice responds that it will assess her, revealing that she is a female of the elf species, which surprises him by confirming that elves really exist in that world. The shock increases even more when the voice informs him that she is 56 years old, making him incredulous that someone who looks so young could be so old. Then Emalia explains that the Abyss Devourer is a monster that camouflages itself in the meadow. It doesn't attack directly, but makes its prey lose their way until they become exhausted, so it can devour them. Shortly afterward, she hugs him, saying it's all right, since even being such a small child, he managed to escape, which leaves Ribik confused, prompting him to ask how old she thinks he is, and she replies 10, when in fact he is 16. Later that night, Emalia apologizes for confusing his age, explaining that she didn't imagine he was an adult with that appearance. Ribike discovers that in this world, people are considered adults at 15. The two then have a meal together, and Ribik thanks her for the food, while Emalia comments that the horned rabbit he brought was a great help. He then asks where exactly they are, which surprises her that he doesn't even know that, and she explains that this place is the kingdom of Aberasia. Rabike then says he came from a place called Japan, but the elf has never heard of that name, which finally makes him accept the reality and conclude that he really ended up in another world. Emalia tells him to sleep because she will take him to the city the next day and then activates a protective spell so they can rest peacefully without worrying about monsters. While she observes the boy, she thinks she has never seen clothes like his, considering him quite peculiar, and begins to suspect that the important something mentioned by the spirit might just be him, becoming curious about who he really is. Next, we see a girl named Mani waking Rabik and complaining about how absent-minded he is, telling him to drink the special from Mani to wake up. As he drinks the coffee, he compliments it, saying it's very good, causing Mani to comment that he is starting to refine his taste, to which he replies that he's almost an adult, although he hasn't grown much. While Mani and Kyuko try to cheer him up, saying that one day he will still grow, a friend jokes that because he is small and cute, he ends up doing well with older women. But Rabike denies it, saying it's just an impression. Then he remembers that summer vacation was approaching, and on the last day of school, when he tried to enter the classroom, an intense light suddenly shone, bringing him back to the present, where he picks up the phone and wonders if his friends are worried about him, but suddenly something hits his head. A clothing button from the elf, which makes him ask the voice what those green things around are, and she responds, assessing it as a barrier magic. He then sits on a stone and decides to evaluate himself again, asking what class means, causing the voice to activate level 1 dictionary and explain that it is a type of profession granted by God upon reaching adulthood. Then he asks what it means to be an evaluator, and the voice informs him that it is a rank B class, capable of identifying other people's abilities, but without combat capability, not being suitable for battles. This makes Ibik think that he is still sleepy and simply goes back to sleep. Later, Emalia wakes up and remembers having helped the boy the previous day, but also recalls that he is 16 years old and is already considered an adult in that world. Noticing that her clothing was open, she becomes embarrassed and quickly closes it. At that moment, Ibich wakes up, says good morning, and returns the button that had fallen the night before, commenting that he was startled when it hit his forehead. Then, they both start walking together towards a city called Raoul. While Ibich asks how far it is, the elf explains that if they follow through the forest, they will arrive faster. But Ibich soon asks if there are no monsters around, and Amalia reassures him, saying she is with him. Then she asks if he can sense the monsters around, and he replies that it's because of his skill map Mundi, which completely shocks her when she realizes it's a rank A ability. Curious, she asks what his class is, and Ibich responds that it says Provisional Evaluator, which confuses her since he does not even know what provisional means. He then asks if this skill is really that amazing, since he can only see people, nearby monsters, and places he has already passed through. Amalia explains that any adventurer would give anything for something like that because it makes survival much easier, which makes Ibik wonder what an adventurer is, leaving the elf shocked that he doesn't even know the basics. He then tries to disguise it, saying he was joking, and mentally asks the voice to explain. And she responds that adventurers are people affiliated with the Adventurers Guild who take on missions like hunting monsters, capturing them, and collecting materials. Upon understanding better, Imalha comments that it now makes sense he was able to escape from the maze devourer. Then, looking at him with a smile, she says that he is someone without common sense, ignorant, and completely clueless, which prompts Rabik to ask if she has any friends, hitting her directly, since she really has none. But he quickly says that she does, because he is her friend, making her extremely happy. Then, Rabik opens his world map and detects something nearby, a crystal-horned rabbit, which leaves Imalha shocked again. When asked if it is different from a common rabbit, she explains that it is completely different, being extremely rare, and can be used to create a panacea or sold for about 200 gold coins. The two then head to the location, and Rabike uses his appraisal ability, identifying that the rabbit has a skill called Escape, making Imalha warn them to approach cautiously. But he explains that he also has a sensing ability, while she uses two techniques to prepare, sound cut and odor cut, which makes her compliment Rabik, saying that his skill is impressive and that many adventurer groups would want him, as he can locate even rare things. Although he says that his class is not combat-oriented, she responds that he can stay in the back while others fight. Then, somewhat awkwardly, she asks if he would like to form a party with her, but Rabike was distracted and asks her to repeat, causing her to feel embarrassed and say it was nothing, thinking it seems like she is throwing herself at him. While he imagines that she must be lonely for not having friends, she then prepares her bow, and Rabik asks where the arrows are, to which she explains that she is a spirit archer, capable of using the blessing of spirits to turn the wind into arrows. She she then shoots, and a scene worthy of a movie occurs. But in the decisive moment, when the arrow almost hits the rabbit, it uses its escape ability and escapes, leaving both of them completely stunned and imalha. Depressed after exerting all her strength in the attack, Rabik then asks if there is a way to handle this ability, and she explains that when the rabbit is attacking someone, it cannot use its escape, suggesting that this could be the perfect opportunity. Rabik immediately offers to serve as a distraction, but the elf warns that it's extremely dangerous. However, Rabik says it will be fine because when she assessed the rabbit, she saw that it was extremely foolish. They then come up with a simple plan using bait to lure the monster while preparing an ambush. Rabik positions herself as the distraction, staying in the open, and, as expected, the rabbit charges ahead without a second thought, falling straight into the trap and, at that exact moment, striking hard and defeating the crystal-horned rabbit. After the victory, Rabik notices something amazing happening as she starts to level up several times at once, both in her skills and in her class, being completely surprised. While Imalha asks if he is okay, he replies that his level just increased out of nowhere, making the elf happy and saying that this achievement belongs to both of them. But in the middle of the celebration, the button on her clothing comes loose again. Next, we see a mysterious blonde man commenting that all of this was just a tutorial, while hoping that Rabik will have a happy life in this new world. Shortly after, the scene shifts to the Adventurers Guild, where a girl named Evil is registering. When informed by the receptionist that the missions are on the board beside her, she says that she already knows exactly what her first mission will be, as she intends to find a specific person. And that's how the first episode comes to an end. So if you made it this far, comment ELF to show you reached the end. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.